Today in a conversation, I'm going to be speaking with author Mary Palmer, impeccable writer. She has a new novel titled It's a Prophecy. She's joining me from Mobile, Alabama. Interesting. And before we get to this conversation with author Mary Palmer, I just want to remind you also of my new novel. Yes, I have a brand new novel titled The Cry of a Lone Bird, and for which I have been heavily involved in the campaign leading up to the big day, the release day, which is October 17th. So, yeah, it's a story also based on a very, very familiar theme, which is social justice, and also stage in the familiar setting, a little place called St. Louis or St. Louis du Nord, one of the northern coastal town of Haiti. Interesting, and of course, you want to know how things happen in the story, so you got to get a copy of it. So it's a story of a young girl who suffered, a gross injustice, and then again she became like a wingless bird until she met Celine. Together they forge such a powerful force in the quest for social justice. Don't miss it. So, yeah, the book can be found everywhere they sell books, including Walmart. You can read also the full synopsis of the book if you go check it out. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to CSMS Magazine as well as the conversation. So without further ado, let's get started with author Mary Palmer. Ready? Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here this evening or this morning. It depends on where you are across the world, with an impeccable writer, a very, very prestigious author. I'm here again with Mary Palmer. She's with us with a new title. It's time for prophecy. And this is a fantasy story, but, with some beautiful twist in it. And then, but to begin with, remember, if you've been following the conversation, author Mary Palmer is a frequent contributor. But Mary, I just have to say welcome again to the conversation.
Thank you so much. I always enjoy being here.
Okay. So now I have a question for you. The protagonist of the story is Jesse Stanton, who lives in two very different worlds.
Right.
One as a part-time Uber driver in Mobile, Alabama, your neck of the hood, and the other one as a savior figure called Christy. So what sparked the idea to blend such an ordinary starting point with such a cosmic calling?
Well, I wanted it to be different, and it's different from my other genres that I usually write in. Mystery's one of my favorites, and then history is another, and I've written biography. Okay. But this one just sort of popped into my mind, and I think it would be a good idea. It's odd because when I started, I didn't intend for it to be as Christian as it turned out.
It's always like that, huh?
Yeah, and saying Christian, I really mean that it's ecumenical. We're not sticking to one religion or anything like that. It's just a broad thing, and it's a character-driven with a plot, but we have the character has his own agenda. He has a Presbyterian minister for father, but he doesn't consider himself to be all that religious. But his father thinks he's a part-time Uber driver. He's really a secret FBI agent. Mm-hmm. And his father's always on his case, and he lives with his father. the funny thing was he was chosen to be Jesus in the second coming, but he can't figure out why. That's the whole mystery. Through the whole story, there's a vein of him trying to say, "Why me, Lord?" And he has a split personality. He can be Jesus as Christy, which happens to be his middle name,
Right.
or he can revert to JC. So he has that dual personality. And
Right.
he's set up. He gets 4 men and 4 women disciples. Okay. I couldn't deal with 12. That was it's the truth, what happened before, but it wouldn't have to happen the second time. So I just, 4 women and 4 men is about all that you can handle in a book. So each person is assigned to save a particular person, and they're from all different ethnic groups and ways of life. It took a lot of research. I always end up with something that does that for some reason. I like things to be authentic. I don't want to just put something out there. I don't want to say there's a palm tree there if somebody can go look and see nothing but pines. So I try to be authentic, and to do that, I had to make sure the real locations that I use were described properly. Well, I'm from Mobile, so I can go to these places and see them. It's that basically after he picks up his disciples, he goes to the former Mobile Civic Center, which they've torn down now and are building a new one. And there's big storms and floods and tornadoes, all kinds of natural disasters. And for those, he is obligated to take care of it. The auditorium holds more than 5,000 people, and everybody gathered there in a shelter. And he has other things happening, and he had to provide them food and stuff like that. It was one of the things he had to do. So I had to know the history of all of that and what would happen with the weather. And they had floods, they had fires, they had everything under the sun was happening. It was Christ-driven. So to do that, you have to make sure you know what happens. I've been through many storms, many hurricanes.
I know.
Lived here, and you probably have too.
Of course, yes.
This
is Northeast Florida,
Yeah, right. You're close. So if you get it wrong, people are going to know, well, that just wouldn't happen. But those places are used as a shelter. In fact, during one storm, I think it was Katrina, they moved all the people from New Orleans over to Mobile and put them on a boat. Turns out they tore up the boat. They had to renovate everything when the people got off the boat, and they couldn't put them off till they were allowed to do so. But the whole thing is that you have to read to the last line to make a judgment. I'm being careful not to reveal anything.
Exactly.
You have to read not the last chapter, not the last paragraph, the last line you have to read to make a judgment. I can't ask you on here what you think, but
let me ask you something here now.
Okay.
Okay, since we're talking about dual personality.
Okay.
So my question is, how did you approach writing that tension without losing me as a reader in abstraction?
Writing about a dual personality?
Right.
I think that people are so interested in psychological things that they will accept that. And, there've been all these movies where people had 6 personalities. I don't know.
Like Eddie Murphy, for example, right? And the Nutty Professor has that, right?
So I don't think that's too hard. I mean, but you have to be careful to keep them separate. And you also have to be careful. Well, you don't want them to overlap, but you have to be careful to make sure that they use the diction and act in the way that a person. I don't have a dual personality. I'm not sure I've got one. but you have to be sure that this person would act this way. And when he becomes Jesus, of course, Jesus would control how he acts as Jesus. God would control that. But his other personality, which was normal, and some of the things he goes through, which you may or may not remember from the book, make him act the way he does. So, but when you come to the end, you have to determine what you think. I'm not going to give any hints because then it's suggestive. I don't want
Exactly. Now, what I have, Mary, while reading the story, I came to a conclusion that Hurricane Fate and Mobile Civic Center, which constitute, a dramatic backdrop to the story,
Hmm.
But why did you choose these two? Is that because just as you just said, you live in a region where hurricane, major storm,
Hmm.
devastating storm,
Hmm.
can change life dramatically in a blink of
Right.
an eye. Was that the reason why that you choose these two, Mr. Pratt?
Pretty much so, because the Civic Center could be a place that they would put people because it holds so many, and that's close to things that they could get supplies and they could get rescue people in there quickly. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's close to every facility they would need after the storm is over. And actually, if you remember, they're building another building on the property, not to do with the new Civic Center. And a lot of people don't like that. So in my story, I'll let the storm tear it down. Just playing little games.
Yeah, I know you said you don't want you. We have to read the last line to
Yep.
know exactly the story. In
Yep.
other words, to uncover the secret. But I have a little question. So, you know, at the heart of the story, which you just briefly mentioned at the beginning, Jesse's struggle to understand why he was chosen.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
not asking you to give anything away, but how do you want readers to wrestle with the same question in their
Well,
lives?
I,
Yeah, like me, for example.
okay. Okay. Well, you read the whole story, so you know it's revealed why before the end. And it's
No, I'm going to. That's for the readers out there.
okay. Okay. Think about the first coming of Jesus. When
Right.
Jesus came the first time, he came in a humble place. He didn't come to something where he was wealthy. He was not ostentatious. He did not even begin his ministry till age 30. He didn't have a wife, and then there's the story of Mary and all of that. So I wanted it to be quite similar to that, where it wasn't something that that an ordinary person could relate to because it could happen to them. And that's why I picked JC because he wasn't perfect. And of course, that's about as far as I can go with that. That he had to learn on his own why he was chosen. And it kind of relates to people who might think they're unworthy, but you can become worthy. And I'm not trying to be a preacher. I don't prophesize. And I hope I didn't do it in the book, even with him, because he wasn't supposed to be that type. Supposed to be the G.I. Joe, ordinary guy who something like this could be happening to him. He could be chosen, or
Right.
a reality thing. And like Joseph, the father
Mhm.
there, they were just people. They weren't somebody special. So I
Now,
think,
was that certain Christian tradition really? Does it play an important role also while you were writing those lines?
it does, whether I like it or not. And whether I agree. I've always said I like to let my characters tell me what they would do. And they do. If you listen, you find out and you think, okay, this person who's always very egotistical and narcissistic isn't going to go rescue somebody in a storm or in a
Sure.
drowning situation. They're just going to take care of themselves, aren't they?
Mhm.
So that's the way I try to look at things. I don't really base things completely on people I know, but you do draw from life, just like I base a lot of things on my travels. I've had a chance to do a lot of that. So I try to meet people everywhere I go and base things on real characters, just in a broad way.
Now, what I really like about the story, it's just like you have the ability to blend, at least to balance fantasy, biblical allegory, and of course contemporary realism. But this is really to work like between these fine lines between the two.
Mm.
Okay, how did you keep those threads woven together without letting one overpower the other? Because you did that so beautifully. And
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's encouraging. And one thing I did, I think, to keep them divided was using biblical quotes. Now,
okay.
I'm not a Bible scholar per se, but if I'm using a biblical quote, it is going to be right out of the Bible, because the first person picks it up is probably going to know the difference if it's wrong. So I'm real careful, but I think the biblical quotes keep this Jesus side of him in focus, because hopefully they're profound enough to make him real and understand that it's really coming from God, not from man, for him to realize these things through the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that keeps him in that side. I think kind of his own father keeps him grounded in the other side, to be a man, because he's a little defiant, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
And that keeps him, I'm going to do it.
But one thing also, remember when we had the first conversation, was the first time ever you were in a conversation, that was when you published Boyington Oaks and the Tree of Life,
right. Mm-hmm.
And there's this mysterious character, Rose de Fleur.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And then we could never find out whatever happened to the Baron. If he, you see, you're trying to find out what happened.
We only know
trying to find nothing at all.
Yeah, we only know that he left his wife and left the country and went back to France. But of course, my story didn't go that far, so I didn't have to know. But I mean, you're curious, aren't you? You want to know it. And I wanted to know.
I really, I'm still searching, for that fact.
I wish I knew. I think I read somewhere that she married Rose, that she eventually married, but
that was years later, right?
I don't know how long, but she seemed to have mourned him a long time. And while we're on that subject, I'd like to bring up a couple of things. We're having the annual Boynton Oak Festival, 8th annual time.
That's the reason why I just made this transition, to give you a wedge to do it. Yeah.
Put me over there.
Yeah.
It will be May 16th, 2026. We've added a few things. We've added a little bit of the trial, which we've had a separate play for the trial at the old First Mobile jail. But we've added that, and we've added antique cars, which there were no cars then, but the antique cars, people liked them because they followed the trolley in the trek down from where the historical place is, the Oakley, to the jail where when he came the other way, he was hanged. And so I have blurbs on that, and that gives them kind of a little unity. It's in a procession. And then, we're still working on the posthumous pardon, and I would love to get that done. We've got it down to the last thing. That's the one we had to have the law changed to make Boynton eligible, but it's down to where they need a circuit court judge's petition, and it has to be a seated DA or circuit court judge. So we're still working on that. It's a slow process.
It is. I know you've been on it for the longest now.
Long time, and we have a stamp. We applied for a stamp of the tree. Now that can take even longer. That's the U.S. Post Office. And then the movie is underway. Now the movie director is working with the Mobile Film Festival. So hopefully we can stir something up with that. It's just hard to get locations, and you have to do things like getting dirt streets and getting traffic out of the way and all kinds of things. That's why it's slow, but I think it'll work. And the next thing, we have support now for from the financial support from the County of Mobile and the City of Mobile. They give us money to help us along.
Okay.
I think we're going to use a publicist this year, since we may have the money. And we're going to go before my attorney friend, who's been real supportive and did a podcast on me early on, and he's involved in this. He and I are going back to the city council, with whom we spoke before, to the next meeting, and we're going to ask for a Boynton Day, hopefully, and also to the county to get double support. Hopefully it will work out. It's still Mobile's oldest and most famous legend, and we'd like to have it on May the 10th, which was the day of the murder, which sealed Boynton's fate, that he was going to die. So everything like that is in progress. It takes time, and it's interesting. I'm very, very interested in history, but if you don't preserve history, it disappears. There's everybody's gone, and then there's nothing.
There's nothing. That's true.
I think it's a worthy cause, and we seem to be getting some support for that. But between all those things, I think we'll have a little bit more groundwork done.
Mm-hmm. But one last, but did you ever find out what area of France was that in from Normandy? Usually, the most of the French settlers who migrated to Louisiana from Canada, they were French Huguenots.
Right. Yeah, I've been there in Canada where they, had to leave, and that governor didn't want them to leave, if you remember that. It was so he was fond of the people, but they had to come, and they had to come to Mobile. The best I know is, and I don't know for sure about all of this, but what my research told me was that when the Baron came over, you're speaking of the Baron, where he came?
The Baron, the Baron.
When the Baron came over, he came after Napoleon was defeated. And
okay. And Waterloo?
Yes.
Okay.
And he was one of his men. So he came, they sent people to Mobile. I think I'm pretty sure I put it in the book. They sent people to Mobile not to Mobile, to Demopolis, Alabama, because they established a wine and grape colony, wine and something colony, two things they had in mind, but the wine was one thing. Well, it turned out that the grapes wouldn't grow so well up there. So the reason they established these colonies is because the people that were in Napoleon's army seemed to press a threat against coming over here and trying to be big shots, trying to take over in the United States. So they thought by offering them something, they would be able to hold them in check. But it didn't work out with the wine. No. But then he moved to Mobile, and I don't know where all the other ones went. But he was in a duel in France, so it made some speculation as to his guilt as far as the murder was concerned. But they didn't ever hold up. He had a lot of power.
I mean, it's kind of a harsh man. I mean, leaving behind, was the Fleur was his daughter, right? Mm-hmm. How could you leave behind, such a precious family and never return?
So, yeah, but that's what people do sometimes. They walk. They don't, some people have no sense of responsibility, and they don't just don't care. So I guess he was eventually turned out to be one of those, and he was a soldier, and maybe he had something to return to in France. I don't know if he had any. Yeah, he was pretty big in Napoleon's army, the way I read it. But it's interesting.
But if he was that big in Napoleon army, I think French National Archive can be a good source of, a good point.
Yeah, and I wasn't working that much on him, so and that was after the book, so that's why I didn't pursue it further. I mean, this is not a book that can have a sequel. You can't bring Charles.
No, you can't. You cannot.
But I mean, it could have something if somebody wanted to take off and use a different story and try to prove what happened to his wife. I mean, his wife and his daughter. But I checked everything I could. I went to the Magnolia Cemetery where most people buried at that time, and I went also to check they were Catholic. I went to the Catholic archives, and I investigated every possibility that might have some records of the burial of any of them, and nothing showed up. So things like that got lost. They know at Magnolia Cemetery, they know that the murdered guy, Nathaniel Frost, is buried there, but they don't know where. They don't have any record. I was very close with the guy who was the caretaker at the time and the manager, and he looked and looked, and they cannot find any record of where Nathaniel Frost is buried in Magnolia Cemetery. They just know he was there. And recently now they've also, we got a sign put up commemorating his thing in his grave from New York, Pomeroy. foundation. And now they've reinstated our trail in Mobile, and they replaced the rusty old sign about the tree trail. So there's 2 signs on his gravesite now, which makes it much more historical. People can find it easier. I think I told you when I first started this research, I went down and took pictures of most of the trees down there. I didn't know which tree it was.
Which one was that? Okay.
Oh, so, but it is the one that's just happens to be up in a corner. And the wall that was there, the brick wall that was there, after it fell, they didn't put it back. So it looks like it's no longer part of the Church Street Cemetery, but it is. But it's a pauper's grave, though. So they didn't really care that much about them. So they just left the wall down. But it's interesting how things like that happen, too. But you can always go off into a million tangents.
Now, let's return to the new way. Do you have a copy of the book with you?
I do, right here. Can you see it?
Yeah. Just raise it a little bit so the audience can see it. There you go. All right. So
Let me show you the back cover.
Okay. Needless to say, the book is available everywhere they sell books. And then I think as the holiday season is upon us, what would be a much more better time to just get a copy and start reading, not just get one copy, but also share it with friends, also invite them to into the world of Marie Palmer as she she presents to us yet another wonderful story.
Well, books make a wonderful gift. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas or birthday or anniversary or something. There's nothing that replaces books. And I think that they say people don't read that much anymore, but we have great luck at all the venues we go to. And I am available for presentations. You can look me up on my website, www.maryspalmer.com, and find the books and find out about the festival and everything. And, if you have gatherings like any kind of groups, I'll go some distance, but, not to Washington, D.C.
but just before you go, I have one final question for you. Mary, I know you said you have to read the last line to get it. But one last line is final returns. So what do you hope readers carry with them from J.C. Stanton's journey?
Well, I don't. It's in a way an as you like it solution. There's not a right or wrong response. And so I'm not really hoping for that. But I hope that they see that one of the messages that is so clear in the book of how ordinary people can do extraordinary things. We all have powers we don't use, don't we?
Right.
And I think that's important to understand that God don't make no fools. So you should do things with all the talent that you have. All of your life you should be learning, and you should be sharing what you learn. That's the way. Otherwise, you're not being productive.